Hey there, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Congratulations on finishing cycle 2. We are now into our last cycle. I think the last cycle. And we are starting with some quadratics. Yay, your favorite. It'll be fine. You've probably seen this before. If not, it should be a good review. And I've tried to lay out the steps well so that you can do the practice questions and the quiz. Okay, so let's go into our presentation mode. So our first lesson for cycle 3 is creating a quadratic equation if you're told a point and zeros of a parabola. Okay, so here's our learning goal for today. So you're going to be able to create a quadratic equation in factored form if you're told the zeros and a point on a parabola. Okay, so this is just a review of the key points on parabolas. So where it goes through the x-axis, that is called the x-intercepts. They're also called the solutions. They're also called zeros, okay? On the same token, where it goes through the y-axis, that's called the y-intercept. So that's down here in the purple, okay? Now, the vertex in the green there is the lowest point or highest point of a graph, depending on which way it's turned. You can also think of it as the point where the graph changes direction. Okay. And the axis of symmetry is the x value of the vertex. That's the line, it's a vertical line that splits the parabola directly in half. And the maximum or minimum value is the y value of your vertex. So just to go over how we write these, so what form they look like. The vertex is a point, so it has to be written in the form your x-coordinate, comma, your y-coordinate. Don't forget that your horizontal axis is your x, and your vertical axis is your y-axis. Okay, axis of symmetry is x, you write it as x equals a number, and that number you just pull from the x value of the vertex. The maximum or minimum value, it's also written as y equals a number, and that number, you're going to pull it from the y value of your vertex. The y-intercept is written as a point, because it is a point, 0, comma, and then whatever your y value is. The same goes for your zeros or your x-intercepts. You're going to write them as x, comma, 0 and x2, comma, 0 if there are two. Okay. Okay, so let's review what the factored form equation looks like. And it looks like y equals a times x minus s times x minus t. And if we remind ourselves what these letters mean, so A tells us the vertical stretch of a parabola, and the sign of it gives the direction of opening. So if A is a positive number, the parabola opens up, and if it's a negative number, it opens down. And now if we look at these two binomials, S and T gives us what our x-intercepts are, or our zeros. So what we're going to do is we're going to find an equation in factored form of a parabola that has zeros of 5 and 3 and passes through 6 and 9. So here are the steps for how to do these types of questions. Your first step is you're going to write out your factored form equation, and you're going to insert your zeros into where your S is and into where your T is. So our zeros are 5 and 3, so you're going to replace S with 5 and T with 3. It doesn't matter which number you put for which letter. I just put it in the order that it appears in the equation, just to make it simple. Okay, so that's step one. Your second step, because we have to figure out what A is. So to do that, we're going to substitute in your point for x and y. So our point is 6, 9. Remember, your first number is your x value, so you're going to put that in for x's, and your second value is your y value, so you're going to put 9 in for y. So we get 9 equals a times 6 minus 5 times 6 minus 3. Okay, now to find a, it is the only variable that we don't know what it is right now. So we're going to do step 3, do our algebra to figure out what a is. So 6 minus 5 is 1, so I change that to a 1, and 6 minus 3 is 3. Okay, so we have a times 1 times 3, so we can do this multiplication to make it a little nicer. So 9 equals 3 times a, and now we need to get a by itself. So remember, to get rid of this 3, we need to divide by 3 on both sides. So a is 3. So your fourth step is you're going to put the a that you found in step 3 into the equation that you started to create in step 1. So our final equation is y equals 3 times x minus 5 times x minus 3. And that's our equation of this parabola that goes through these points. To check this, you can graph it in Desmos. So here's a screenshot of me going to Desmos, and I just typed in my equation. I took a look at the graph. It does go through the x-axis at 3 and 0 and 5 and 0, and it also goes through 0.69. That should be a comma. I'm going to change that. So using Desmos to check your solutions is a really great idea. Okay, next one. This is, you're shown the graph and you need to find the equation in factored form. Well, it shows you what your zeros are and you have more than one point. So we're going to follow the exact same steps that we just did in example 1. So our first step, again, insert the zeros into your factored form equation. So you're going to do negative minus 2, okay, and then minus 4. So you're going to put your x values of your x-intercepts or your zeros in for s and t. Remember, if you have a negative minus a number, you get a positive number. So there's the basics of our equation, but we need to figure out what a is. So to do that, we're going to substitute another point in for x and y. So I'm going to choose 0 and 8 because I like working with zeros. They're nice. But you can choose any other point along the graph if you like. Okay, so if we put 0 in for x and 8 in for y, we get 8 equals a times 0 plus 2 and 0 minus 4. And now we're going to do our algebra to figure out what a is. So 0 plus 2 is 2, and 0 minus 4 is negative 4. So we get this, and now we're going to multiply these together to simplify that term. So 8 equals negative 8a. And to find a, you're going to divide by negative 8 on both sides, giving you negative 1 as your a. Your final step is to put a back into the equation that you created in step 1 to get the final equation. So your final equation is y equals negative x plus 2 times x minus 4. Yes, you can put a 1 here. I just don't write the 1 if it's 1, if that makes sense. If you do put it there, it's not wrong. Okay, so just to check this in Desmos, here it is. So I typed in our equation that we created, and notice how it matches exactly with the graph in the example. Okay. another one. This one is from a table of values. So remember our step one is to find the zeros and put them into the equation. Well, don't forget that your zeros is when y is 0. So find the points when y is equal to 0. And now we can insert the x values for the zeros in our factored form. So our general equation is going to be y equals a times x minus 3 times x minus 7. Okay, our next step then is to choose another point to put in for x and y. You can choose any other point that you'd like. I'm going to choose the top one just to make it simple. It's the first one. So I'm going to put in 2 for x and 5 for y. So 5 equals a times 2 minus 3 times 2 minus 7. Then we're going to do our algebra to find a. So 2 minus 3 is -1, and 2 minus 7 is -5. So my equation becomes this. And now I'm going to multiply these terms out to make it more simplified. So -1 times -5 is +5. And if we're going to get rid of this 5, we have to divide by 5 on both sides, which gives us a is 1. Step 4, put our a into this equation that we created to get the final version. Because a is 1, you could either put nothing there or you can put a 1 in front. That's fine. And that's our final equation. And again, you can check in Desmos. So what I did in Desmos, if you click the plus sign here, you can enter a table. And I put the table in so I could see my green points. And then I put my equation in with red, and we notice that it matches. So that means we definitely did this right. So that's good. Last example. Find the quadratic equation in factored form for a parabola with zeros of 8 and 3 and a y-intercept of -7. Okay, so our first step, again, insert our zeros into our factored form. So I put 8 in for s and 3 in for t. Our second step is to substitute a point in for y. Well, it may not be super obvious in here that we have a point, but telling us that the y-intercept is -7, that gives us a point. Because remember, a y-intercept is when it's along the y-axis, which means x is 0. So our point we can use to substitute in is 0 and -7. So we're going to put in zeros for our x's and -7 for our y. And then we're going to go over here and do our algebra. So you're going to put in -8 here and -3 here. We're going to multiply those out. Ooh, that should be +24, shouldn't it? Did I do that right? 8 and -3. 8, -3. Let's see if it works out. Okay, so let's change that. That should be positive, which means this will be negative. To get rid of the 24, we're going to do -7 divided by 24, which gives us about 0.29. And so I am going to change that to negative just so that we have it, which means that my Desmos is going to be wrong. So, which makes sense because I had it going through 7, not -7. So I'm going to go check it in Desmos, and then we can do that again. So y equals, it was -0.29. Oops. Start all over again. So -0.29, and it was, wow, what is happening? Equals -0.2. Okay, I'm going to close this. Sorry, guys. Y equals -0.29. 0.29, 9, You guys must get so annoyed with this. X minus 8 and then x minus 3, right? There we go. So now I'm hoping that goes through -7, and it does, or close enough. Okay. Because I rounded this, I think it was put 0.29222 or something like that. Anyway, so what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot of this and then I will put it in here so you can see that. In case you didn't watch the video, and if you didn't, then you're not seeing this anyway, so. Okay, let's just do this. Okay, there we go. That makes far more sense. Okay, so that's it for the lesson. For you try, please do page 2 of the Cycle 3 practice booklet. That is now posted on Brightspace, and the answers to those questions is provided on the page inside the booklet. Once you're done those and you feel comfortable, go ahead and do quiz 3.1 on Brightspace. So that's it for today. Congratulations on completing the first lesson of Cycle 3, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye, guys. Miss you.